Welcome back. The Federal Trade Commission's landmark trial against Meta begins today after a nearly 6-year investigation. A judge set to decide whether Meta broke antitrust laws to secure an illegal social media monopoly. Meta says, quote, more than 10 years after the FTC reviewed and cleared our acquisitions, the commission's action in this case sends the message that no deal is ever truly final. Good point. The judge presiding over the trial is James Boasberg, the same judge who tried to halt President Trump's gang member deportations to El Salvador. Joining me now is the man himself, Federal Trade Commission Chairman Andrew Ferguson. Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Good to have you here.
Morning, Maria. Thanks for having me.
What is your thought about this Meta trial? I thought Meta made a good point. Are we just going to keep going back and saying it's not legal after the commission already said that it was a go when they first did these acquisitions?
Well, President Trump began this suit in 2020, and we're seeing it through today. On the finality of transactions, you know, the FTC doesn't clear transactions. It tries to make a prediction about whether a transaction is going to be anti-competitive. But here we have actual evidence that the transactions turned out to be anti-competitive and have given Facebook and Meta a tremendous amount of power we all saw on full display in 2020. And so that's what this case is about addressing the power of Meta and making sure that the situation we had in 2020 can never arise again.
Well, you're right. I mean, that is a major factor because they've got what? They've got Facebook, they've got Instagram. You know, I mean, is it a monopoly?
We certainly think it's a monopoly, and we think that the evidence that we're going to put on at trial is going to show that it's a monopoly. And look, we all saw full on in 2020 how much power these social media platforms have over every aspect of our daily life, of our politics, our elections, our social lives, our economic lives. And that's what this case is about addressing that sort of power and making sure that 2020 can never happen again.
That is a great point, and I'm glad you made it because, you know, you can't have billionaires and potentially monopolistic companies changing elections. And that's what, you know, many people said happened then. Andrew, I want to get your take on your look and sentiment around deals because your predecessor, Lina Khan, was against deals, and it stopped a lot of progress. Give us your sense of how you will look at mergers and acquisitions today. Do you find that your sentiment or your approach to these things is different than your predecessor?
Yeah, it is different. So look, I'm an antitrust enforcer. I think it's really important to protect all Americans in every aspect of their daily lives by making sure that we don't have monopolies and we don't have fraud. But, you know, mergers and acquisitions are an important part of how the economy grows. It's an important part of how we have innovation and vibrancy in our economy. The only way we can keep capital flowing in our economy is by making sure that investors have a way of realizing returns on their investment. And part of that is M&A. So I see it as the FTC's job to look at mergers, and if we think they're anti-competitive, go to court. If we think we can win, if we think they're anti-competitive, go to court. But if we think they aren't, we got to quickly get out of the way. Look, President Trump won a landslide victory, and one of the reasons he won that victory is that he's promised a deregulatory agenda. And I see it as my job to help implement that deregulatory agenda by looking at mergers, and if we think they're anti-competitive, go to court. And if we don't, get out of the way, let markets do their thing, let markets grow our economy and achieve all the innovation that Americans need.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying. I mean, you're part of the president's regulatory team, and the president wants to assure that this golden age that he's promising will last beyond, you know, his term. How do you do that? How do you codify these things to ensure that this, you know, this sentiment that you're bringing to us this morning cannot be reversed in 4 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in order to make sure that that golden age President Trump promised, and which is part of the main reason that he won the landslide victory in 2020, I think we got to do a couple things. And he's doing it right now. First, we have to reorient the world trade system to make it work for the ordinary American. And President Trump is the first president in my lifetime to really try to do that. And I think that's what he's been after for these last couple weeks with tariffs. Number one. Number two, deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. President Trump promised that. That's what he's been doing. It's very hard to implement regulations. And so if President Trump roots out a lot of these regulations, that will make it very difficult for any subsequent anti-business, pro-regulatory administration to do it again. And at the FTC, President Trump issued an EO directed at me just last week to scour all the regulations in the Federal Code of Regulations, find the anti-competitive ones, and recommend them back to the government for deletion. And we're starting that process today. I think
love that.
Third, it's all about personnel. We all had to live through the lawfare nightmare of the last 4 years. No one had to suffer worse from that than President Trump. And part of the way you end that lawfare is you get bad personnel out of the government. And that is what President Trump has been doing with tremendous success for the last couple months. And then I think the fourth thing has to do with antitrust. Again, we all saw the tremendous power that these social media platforms have over our lives. Antitrust can help protect ordinary Americans in our politics and our elections and our social life and our economic life from these incredibly powerful companies by taking the antitrust laws very seriously. And that's part of how we make the golden age permanent.
I want to get back to the antitrust issues in a second, but are you seeing any anti-Americanism out there? Because President Trump has been so forceful in terms of America First, which is excellent. But I'm wondering what that means for some of our friends across the world. J.P. Morgan Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon weighed in on it last week when I spoke to him on Wednesday. Watch this. President Trump has been trying to put America first. Is he doing that while also alienating foreigners to America? Somebody told me last night, look, I'm trying to do a deal in Canada. They say we don't want to buy American in any way right now. Do you see any anti-American sentiment?
Yeah, we've lost a couple of bond deals already because they're not mean. They simply say that, look, we'd rather just do this with a local bank than with a U.S. bank. Look, we could overcome that. That's why part of me thinks that don't let this go on too long because it's causing cumulative damage, including huge anger at the United States. Like I said, my goal would be keep the allies together.
What do you think, Mr. Chairman? Are you seeing any of that? Fewer cross-border deals in any way?
I haven't seen it. Look, we are the most vibrant, innovative economy in the world, and I think what President Trump is doing is making sure that that vibrancy and that innovation works for all Americans all the time. And I support what he's trying to do. He's trying to make the world economy work for the average American. And I haven't seen any backlash, in cross-border deals, and I don't expect it. And even if there were, I think it's really important what President Trump is doing to try to make the world trade system work for all of us ordinary Americans. Yeah.
Well, I mean, President Trump told me in my interview with him last month that he wants a world, he wants a country, rather, where the private sector is in charge. The private sector is running the economy in terms of growth. And that's what you want to see with social media as well, right? I mean, you've got this Meta trial today. Because of the monopolistic actions that many say were evident for Meta, you had Devin Nunes come and run President Trump's, Truth Social. So that gave us a little more balance. Is it 100% balanced? No, because Meta is much bigger and in terms of its reach. So what else can you do at the FTC to ensure that the business community, that the markets are creating that kind of competition that you're looking for?
I think it's really important that we don't overregulate. I think that's been one of President Trump's, principal objectives, is making sure that the private sector drives our growth and not basically the public sector, which is what we had for 4 years under President Biden. But I think 2020 revealed Meta is different. And companies with that much power can affect so many parts of our lives, not just our economic lives, our political lives and our social lives. And the antitrust laws can help make sure that no private sector company gets so powerful that it affects our lives in ways that are really bad for all Americans. And that's what this trial beginning today is all about.
So tell me specifically how you are different than Lena Khan.
I'm different than Lena Khan because I think M&A is good for the American economy. It drives private sector growth. And if a deal is anti-competitive, we'll move swiftly. And if it's not, we will get out of the way equally swiftly. I don't want to have the FTC like it was for the past 4 years, where deals would come into the agency, they would disappear, no one understood what was going on. And it sure seemed like a lot of times the FTC was hoping that deals would sort of die on the vine without any official action. If they're anti-competitive, we'll go to court. If we're not, we're going to get out of the way, and we're going to let the economy grow for all Americans.
Very great points. Very well said. Mr. Chairman, before you go, do you see an increase of sort of those deals that were on the shelf coming off the shelf for your review at this point?
We've seen a pickup in deal activity, especially right in February. And we'll see if that continues. The FTC is ready for whatever comes. But again, my main goal is regulatory certainty and clarity. If a deal's anti-competitive, we're going to be honest with the business community and say, look, we're going to have to go to court on this. And if it's not, we're getting out of the way. We've granted early terminations of deals to allow them to close early. The previous administration was refusing to do that. We've already brought that back, and we're already seeing improvements in the process at the FTC under President Trump.
Oh, terrific. Really important interview this morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.